So this is a story about me. It's about me in a particular place. Uh, it's about something that's happening to me or through me. I'm not quite sure which. It's a little bit of a mystery, and it continues to happen. Like, I wouldn't be sitting beside Mary Ann here were it not for the start of this story. I wouldn't be talking to you just now. No, that's not to say I would have disappeared or died. It's just that the chain of events that started in this story have led to here. So you're now part of this story. This is not a story about something that has happened. It's a story about something that is happening. And maybe you can throw up a clue or two as to what is going on here. About 2015, I was out on a work assignment on the Outer Hebrides in the southwest of the Isle of Lewis in an area called Uig. And it somehow has struck a real kind of resonance with me. And it continues to kind of act on me. People, when I was given the assignment, said, "Oh, you're going way out there. That's the kind of edge." Now, I don't consider myself a poet like Marcus or Podrick, but almost as soon as I got there, words started forming, and they formed in a way that was new to me. And they didn't form as something that I wrote down. They just kind of began to come as a voice, bizarrely. And now I'm going to make you think I'm very dubious. My own voice, which is kind of slightly strange. Words started to form. No edge this, but the eternal wedding of tide and place, longing and belonging. These words just kind of came. I was out with my new colleague, Kate, and we both have strong island connections. We hit it off on the plane on the way out, and we decided to approach this development regeneration project in a kind of way that was more in keeping with what we think are the ways that our friends and family and folk out in the islands would do it. So it was a bit less PowerPoint and spreadsheet and a lot more story and just getting out there, getting our senses working, listening to stories, soaking up the smell of the place, the sounds, all that kind of stuff. So we'd listen and we'd look, and then we'd sit down with the people and hopefully with them weave their stories together into the kind of shape that the power brokers and funders and all that kind of thing like. So that was the basic idea. That was the intent. Seek first to understand, and we'll look, we'll listen. So I went out and I looked. And I'm afraid I'm not up to the lyricism that is required of one who could do justice to the beauty of some of these landscapes. I mean, just mile after mile of empty silver crescent beaches. Absolutely gorgeous. And the kind of massive rocks that totter over the sea and then gradually march back towards the mountains that look over at this big patchwork of green in the grass and grey in the rock, all meeting. We were very fortunate. It's not always like this, as most of you know. Real blue skies. And then everywhere, water, everywhere, a kind of blue-green shimmering. And I just don't have the words to do the intensity, to do justice to the intensity of that kind of shimmering. But particularly important for us, here and there were huddles of houses, of households, of dwellings. And you know, I'm human. Some of these houses were just jaw-dropping. Not so much the architecture, but the location. See, there's an involuntary gasp, and then a slightly guilt-ridden surge of envy. I think, I want that house. It's a lovely house. I wish I lived out there. And then your eyes would turn, and there'd be an altogether different emotion stirs as you see a different kind of settlement. Abandoned, old, falling down black houses slowly sinking into the lime green sheep pasture. And you can't help but be moved by that. it kind of reminds you that so much of the Highlands and Islands, and Uig in particular was a good example at the time, they just aren't what they once were. And so you kind of feel that. And maybe that's partly what I, in particular, was responding to. So you look and you see all these kind of things, and I listened, and what struck me most in the sound was the constant interaction of the water and the ground, the sea and the land, from gentle lapping up on these beautiful crescent beaches to more agitated nibblings, even more energetic tidal surges, and then further off, waves crashing against rocks. Bizarrely, even in good weather, you get waves crashing off these rocks. And to me, this was all taking me by surprise. To me, it felt like the sea was, it was like eyes darting around. It was so blue. Many of the people out there, probably the Viking heritage, have got incredibly piercing blue eyes. The sea was looking for something. It was searching for something, endlessly looking for something. So more words came. Eyes of a blue to dissolve the world, seek up and down the restless coast. Rocks, higher and deeper than death itself, break their murmured prayer of waiting, and the north and the south, the east and the west tremble under the sky. I had no idea where these words were coming from. It was me, but it wasn't me. It wasn't what I'd been expecting. And it was kind of coming from the place, and they were kind of tying me into the place in a strange way. I was being claimed by it. It was almost as though I was expected. I can't explain it any other way. And I know that makes me sound like a very strange person, but it was like I was expected. For I am the flame that darkness burns, the running wave and the bow. I am the tide that quietly turns, and I am turning now. That's kind of how it ended. And I'm not for a minute claiming that that's a good poem. But that and one other one written in the same trip are the only poems from poems that I've written that I can remember. More have followed, and they all have got this kind of energy. It seems to be very tied into place. So I know I sound a bit strange. I am a bit strange, but I don't know what's going on here. The other poem that I just mentioned another poem. It came in the same way, and it was different senses that this was stimulated by. I was wandering around one of these abandoned black house settlements, and this just kind of came to me, and it was imagined as a parting between two lovers. There's a lot of stuff out there about the clearances, and one of the things that I think I was determined to do in the work was not turn it all into statistics. These are people, real stories, all that kind of thing, and we're awash with statistics and consequences and all that kind of thing. This was an attempt to present it back to the community, if you like, as a story. But it came before that idea. The idea was subsequent to that. Here's just a little part of it. Two lovers parting last time they met, and you hid your face as I kissed your tears and your salted lips and your soul. A curlew cried, an abject cry that hung forlorn o'er the beastless field, and my heart, it beat like a tight clenched fist on my breaking ribs as I bid you go. And again, I'm not claiming that's a particularly good poem, but I cannot deny the intensity with which I feel whatever is giving rise to it. It just kind of makes me wonder, is this my imagination? Am I losing it? You know, that does happen. Or is there something going on here? Perhaps more than anything, and I think this might be the keys, my senses were absolutely assaulted by the landscape, the sound, what I saw, what I smelled, what I heard, stories, the people, everything. But what did that all give rise to? Well, an almost tangible sense of emptiness and loss, which is strange that such abundance can give rise to grief. So what was going on? Why should I be feeling this? Here's my only clue. A couple of years after the trip, a friend of mine, I live just outside Oban, a friend decided to do my family tree. I was doing work down in Edinburgh, and I got a call during a meeting. So I went out and took the call. And she said to me, guess what? You're from Skye, the Isle of Skye. I said, well, that's pretty good. The reason that I was intrigued was that my family had spent a generation or so in the shipyards in Clydebank in Glasgow. And I knew that they were from Argyll originally, but there was a missing bit that was difficult to tie down, and there was conflicting stories in the family. So she said, yeah, Valtis, Uig, Rocher. It's all right. What a surprise. Never expected that. Still, Valtis, Skye, great place. Very happy with that. Sure, it's not Valtig, Valtis, Uig, Lewis. And I said that as a joke, half plea. Now it turns that the place in Lewis that I had been, where the poems had come from, also has a Valtis. Also beside Uig. An hour later, I got another phone call, and she said, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm wrong. Rocher in these days included Lewis, Valtis, Uig, Skye was in Inverness-shire. So you are from Valtis, Uig, Lewis.